Welcome to the show, Benno.
Thank you, Eldin.
I met you 6 years ago in Hammerfest in northern Norway. One of the locals told me I was watching at the sea, and he said, behind this island that you see there, it's Svalbard and then the North Pole. So you are on the top of the world. I really loved your choreography. I was there on rehearsals. I didn't have an opportunity to see everything, how it panned out. I was moved and touched how you did it with the refugees from Afghanistan and Syria.
Oh, there was boys from Afghanistan in the pre-workshop week before we started to make the actual performance. But in the performance project, there were 5 boys, the age between 15 and I think the oldest was 20 or 21. 4 of them came from Syria and 1 from Eritrea.
For some reason, I always thought that this guy from Afghanistan is in the performance.
No. One older guy, he was there, he was very much participating in the project, in the rehearsals, but because of his work, he couldn't participate in the performance at the end. So he was there and we used some of his stories in the performance, but he was not in the actual performance.
I was really touched and moved by the whole performance. I think I was on the general rehearsal the last time and I had to go and leave Norway. I thought in the package that it was a story that pushed a little bit on creative narrative, in my world at least. I was stunned.
Thank you. I mean, the project was called Tomorrow's Witnesses in English. The idea of the project was to bring together elderly in the late 70s, 80s, and survivors of the Second World War. During the Second World War in 1944, when the Russians pushed the Germans out of the Kola Peninsula, Germans, they had their main military bases in Kirkenes, which is is close to the border with Russia. And Germans expected the Russians to push further into Norway, which actually didn't happen. And so they decided to evacuate the whole population of Finnmark, most northern province of Norway, south in Norway, and they burned down everything. The whole infrastructure, most houses, villages, small towns. So Hammerfest was, apart from a small chapel, completely burned down in October 44. In the project, there were 2 elderly that were children when that happened, and they had, of course, still a memory of being evacuated from Hammerfest. They were in the project participating, and the other group were newcomers, like people that have fled conflicts and wars in the countries where they originate from and have arrived in Hammerfest, living in Hammerfest. The idea behind that was to bring together, in a way, they're universal, unfortunately, stories of people that are forced to move from their home country, home place, to leave their homes and to go somewhere else. The performance that I created was talking about the impact of that, about the personal stories from the participants. And I was helped by the 4 professional performers, dancers that were in the project, which is something that with this kind of project, I always have been doing. When I work with a specific group of non-professional performers, dancers, you might say, to work with professionals. And so there's a constant exchange in the group between the target group, you might say, and the professional dancers to work together to create a performance.
The term professional and unprofessional.
Right.
Because, as you know, Van Gogh or Van Gogh on Dutch said that there is no professionals and amateurs. You either paint or you don't. What is professional and what is amateur? I know some professionals that are sloppy, don't show on time, whatever are they're doing. Vice versa. I know so-called amateurs that are always on time, very talented and hardworking, but they don't have a right education. What is amateur and what is professional?
I find it a totally uninteresting subject. Is it the moment you make money that you are professional, and the moment you don't make money with the art you make, you're an amateur? You could argue that, but I think it's not so interesting. This kind of project, this was the fourth one actually of this kind of bigger project where I combined professionals, meaning they have an education behind them, are working within the field and have, in that sense, have wider experience, together with non-professionals or amateurs, whatever you call them, people with either completely no experience of being on stage or some of them sometimes some experience, but to work together in creating a performance in which the differences are blurred in a way. It's very much a collaboration between everyone involved in a project. Now, of course, for me, as the initiator, the choreographer, the director, whatever you might call, my role is that it's very helpful to have people with a wider experience. And that's where I bring in the so-called professionals to work together with the non-professionals and to also, within a very short period of time, to create a performance that hopefully works for an audience that is not consisting of just friends and family that are by nature, of course, go to see you on stage and have a very positive starting point. Like, I'm excited to see my son on stage. But the performance should also work for someone that has not that kind of connection and simply goes because he or she is interested in seeing a performance. All these projects have always been geared towards creating with people that have different levels of experience.
Thank you. I was wondering what initially drew you to contemporary dance as a form of artistic expression. What was the initial need?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I'm from the Netherlands, and this is a long time ago now for me. When I finished my high school, I was 18, and then I took a year off before deciding what to study at the university, because I grew up with the idea I am going to study something at the university and I will become a professor. When I was a small boy, that was the idea. What I was going to study varied from year to year. And I took a year off to figure out. I didn't know really what I wanted to study. And in that year, I went to see a lot of performances, both theater and dance performances. And I really enjoyed so much to go to the theater, to be in that position of place for imagination. When I finally decided to study, and I was going to in Leiden in the Netherlands to study cultural anthropology, I also put myself on the list of a performance group within the university, so a student performance group that started that year to make performance would be performed in Leiden, and then we also performed it in Amsterdam. That changed a lot for me. The moment I was on stage, I fell in love with the stage. And so the second year of my studies, we continued with this group and we made another performance which was actually even more successful in terms of the touring of it in the Netherlands. And at the end of my second year, I decided I don't want to become an academic. I want to be on stage. I mean, even though I loved to move, I'm not coming from a family of artists. I had no reference. To become a dancer, I'm too old because I was already 21 almost. And so I decided I thought, okay, I will become an actor. And so I tried to get into acting school. I tried even mime school. There I almost got into the mime school. I just had one vote too few. But several teachers, both in the acting schools and in the mime school, told me, like, Benno, you should figure out about dancing. I think it fits you much better. And my response was, well, thank you, but I think I'm too old for that already. You should have started in your teens. Until I moved to Amsterdam and found out about the School for New Dance Development in Amsterdam that was taking in students that were already further into their 20s. I went there, I did courses there before I did the selection, and it felt very much like coming home, like finding a way of working that fitted me, fitted my body and my interests very, very strongly. I did the selection and I got in, and then the rest is history. I did a 4 years education in Amsterdam. I was 25 when I started the school. And 29 when I finished. And since then, I've been working as a dance artist, mostly independent.
describe your typical creative process when choreographing a new piece?
Oh, it varies. I've been doing and still do quite different projects, I think. For the last 10 years, I've been mainly choreographing for other people. Like I'm not on stage myself. Before that, I did many performances, many duets actually. So collaborations with colleagues, mostly from the dance field, sometimes also from other performing fields. Then making work for a group of people. And in the last few years, I made my first evening-long performance, solo performance, and I'm now working on a new solo that will actually premiere next year, beginning of 2025, at Dansers Hus in Stockholm. Much of my way of working is that I work with improvisation. I might have an idea of starting point, what the theme or the topics of a performance are, but I have not a clear idea of the end result when I start. I always feel that I'm best in a way when I'm on the floor, when I work either with myself, when I work on a solo, or when I work with others. And we start often from more general improvisations, general ideas to stimulate a sensitivity in the performers to create, to work with movement. It's there where I start to see the possibilities and where the seeds that I've planted, they start to grow, and I can see in which direction to guide a theme with the people I work with. The end result of a performance, like the one you saw in Hammerfest, when I say, like, okay, tomorrow we have the premiere, I didn't know that performance at the beginning of the process.
You spoke about improvisation, and a lot of artists that I interviewed for this podcast, but also that I know, and myself as a painter, improvisation is a big part of it. How much does improvisation actually takes over, or do you have more planned steps of what to do, how to do it, or it's the other way around?
Improvisation for me in most performances, it's not only used in the process of creation. So in other words, to use improvisation to find material, and then once you find it, you define it and you set the exact steps, which is often used in choreographical processes by many colleagues, is that they use improvisation at the beginning of creating a new performance to find different sequences in dance material. But then the next step is from finding different qualities, different kind of materials, etc., to then set the exact movements. Sometimes I do that also to set something very specific, like, okay, do this, do that, from material that also is developed out of improvisations. But in a lot of performances, many performances, I work not with setting the exact movement materials, but I set the parameters of a specific scene that I create either for myself or with the performers. Parameters might be like, okay, where in space does it take place, or how is space being used? What is the length of a scene? What kind of music? What is the relation to the music? What kind of movement material belongs to this scene? What is the intention of the material? Is there a development in the scene that you start from one point and you, within the length of time of the scene, you move to that point? There are many parameters, I call them, that the performer knows. But every time you perform it, you have to recreate it. You have to, again, find your entrance to move in that scene and to move within the parameters of that scene. For me, it's creating a choreography, but there's still a level of improvisation. If you put one performance and the next day you do again that performance and you look at the different scenes of the performance, you can clearly see they are similar, but you also see their differences. And for me, I've always worked like that, both in the work that I'm performing myself in, as well as the work that I create with other performers.
How do you collaborate with other dancers or artists in your creative work? Do you give them a set of rules and give them guidance, give them a little bit of freedom within that confinement?
It's obviously the second. I seldom tell them what to do. I mean, sometimes I might, if it's sort of my choreography, sort of the end decision is mine. I can't remember any moment that I asked a performer to do something and that performer actually didn't want to do that. And I told him or her, but you have to do it because I want that. That doesn't exist actually in my way of working. It's always a collaboration. It's always together with the performers that we find a form that works.
For example, when you prepare yourself to do a rehearsal, do you have any rituals that you prepare yourself mentally and physically?
There's, of course, I mean, which is in a way you can see that as a ritual. I never thought of it that way, but like the warming up, like, you get into the studio and you have to start working. And because it's physical form, but I think also for actors, you do warm up, which might also still be physical, or you do it also for your voice to warm up. But in work that I do with people, we do a common warm up together, which is both to develop a level of shared experience within the group. And the group, again, consists of both professional and non-professional. To arrive at a place where the group comes together and is functioning as, to some extent, as a unity, but also where the body individually is ready to explore different ideas of different scenes on the table of that rehearsal.
I don't have an opportunity to do that, but I always wanted to do choreography of dancers as a short film. I always thought very ritualistic in some way. I always wanted to make a small video about it, short video, film, whatever. What are the challenges of contemporary dance?
Poof! There might be many different challenges on different levels that play a role in the process of making a performance. I mean, one of the challenges, the very practical ones, like if you have an idea for a project, where do you get the funding? How is the funding? Where do you find the money? Where can you create a production? How do you convince people to be interested in your project? But in the work itself, sometimes the challenges are the intensity of, especially of those kind of projects that we started to discuss. In many ways, they're very intense projects. It's a period of 4 or 5 weeks, sometimes 6 weeks. You work together and you work almost day and night with each other. It's a very intense period of working, and that is very beautiful. To give an example of time, like the rehearsal times, we work 6 days a week for a period usually of 4 weeks of rehearsals, sometimes with a week of workshops before the rehearsal start. We work usually from 10 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And then outside of that, there's all the organizational work that takes place. To work that intense with people that are not used to work within the field of dance and performance is by itself quite a challenge. The moment that the performance is created, many of the projects in the 2 weeks after the premiere, we have an intensive schedule of touring. Like some of the performances, it's literally in a period of 14 days, 9 different performances in 7 different cities. So even for a touring company, it's a very intensive schedule that you bring people in on a voluntary basis. The challenge in there is also to create an atmosphere and to create a sense of sharing the experience with each other, that people are willing to invest that time and energy in a project, and also in a project that is actually very personal for many of the participants because it's connected to their experience, which is at the other side also why I think many of them are very happy to participate in it, because many people have a need, or they take a level of pleasure or satisfaction or fulfillment out of sharing their stories towards an audience.
I was hoping to have a good dialogue with you, and I'm having it. So thank you very much, Benno. One of the challenges for me personally as a painter and writer and a filmmaker, I always struggle with, I will not say inspiration per se. I always see it as a goddess, inspiration as a goddess. In the dance, where you're choreographing or when you are actually rehearsing for a dance, you know where you're going, but you're not there yet. How do you get over that?
In my case, I feel like they're two different challenges. I mean, they're related, but they're different when I work as a choreographer with others. So I'm in front, so to speak, of the performers that, work within the parameters, the ideas that I give them. Or when I work by myself solo and I'm alone in the studio, which is a far more frightening situation for me. Because when I work with others, partially because it's much more of a shared process in which there's still phases after in the making of a performance. Even the performers might get impatient, like, Benno, what do you want? And I say, I don't know yet. Let's continue working and trust that giving things in the middle of processes. There's a bunch of material, but I don't know yet how to combine it or what to continue with and what to maybe leave behind me. And which might feel as if I'm undecisive. Benno, make a decision now. What are we going to do? Or how are we going to continue with this? And I literally don't know. I feel like I need the time and the allowance also to not know. When I work with myself, there's no one else than me in the studio. And that can be quite intimidating. You're trying things and sense of being critical to yourself. I don't know if you have that when you're painting. How do you start a first stroke, and how do you look at the first stroke you do on the canvas to decide or to feel like what is the next one?
When I want to paint, the first that I wanted to do is I need to figure it out what I'm going to paint. Motif, idea, and everything that I do is on autopilot. But with the writing, it's so much editing. Just edit, edit, edit. It's always in process, and I'm never satisfied. If I'm satisfied, I think I will stop painting or writing, but I'm afraid as well that I will never reach that moment.
That I don't feel. I can relate to the sense of, the searching, the not knowing, the insecurity. In the summer of 2022, I had a 3-month residency at the studio of Konstnärs Nämnden in Stockholm, which was fantastic. I had for myself 3-month studio 24/7. I could go there whenever I wanted during the day, stay there as long as I wanted. No questions asked in terms of it didn't need to be productive, but of course you want to use your time to create something. I changed the subject, things I wanted to explore, which was connected to my experience that I had at the beginning of that year when the full-scale invasion in Ukraine started on the 24th of February. And I was in Russia at that moment doing a project in Murmansk. I knew that Russia was going to invade Ukraine. Every day, every morning when I woke up, I opened my computer to see if they had started that day, that morning with the invasion. On the 24th of February, Russia had started this full-scale invasion. There was such an anger, such a rage boiling up in me. I felt like I need to do something with that experience or with that feeling. Also because I know so many Ukrainians. I've done so much work there, as well as in Russia, actually. When I started the residency, for the first 3 weeks, I was like going back and forth and not knowing, playing around, until I invited some friends to come and watch or to be with me, and we improvised together. And the moment that there was someone else coming in and I showed what I thought was not there, in a way, things started to fall in place. Why I'm telling that is, it's a long story, but like there's something of that. Even though you feel like nothing is happening, how to shape the initial idea or to find shapes for the initial starting points, it's actually by being busy, in a way, the discipline of still going to the studio, to hang around, to try things, to do things, but to be present in the studio. That time allow yourself to spend searching, moving away, not knowing. Things do start to settle in somewhere. You only realize it, or I realized it, the moment that someone else came to watch and I presented some of my ideas.
What is the role of contemporary dance in conveying emotions and messages to the audience?
That's a very big question. For me, as a dancer, somebody that works mainly through movement to create my art, my work, the body and the ability and the capacity of a body to express or to work with different ideas, concepts, different lived experiences brings another insight that is sometimes hard or difficult to put words to, can be experienced by people that watch and look at the performance. First time I saw Pina Bausch, this was in the early 80s in Amsterdam, I was so deeply moved by her work. When I look at a dance or a dancer, see what the dancer is performing, is dancing in front of my eyes, that experience, I often feel like it goes directly down to my guts. Instead of that, it first goes to my conscious brain of trying to understand a language. It goes first to the brain, deciphering what is actually the meaning. Whereas with dance, it's a visual art form. The experience of it is that you first experience it as a physical before you understand it also with the brain, or to try to give words to it.
That's why I'm doing these interviews with artists, especially in Sweden, because people don't appreciate art in Sweden. You understand me what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm trying to bring as many people as I can to go and see exhibitions, performances, plays, to read books, to see good films, European cinema, art cinema, independent American films. Can we discuss the importance of storytelling in contemporary dance?
How do you define storytelling?
As a visual means to convey a message to the audience.
I work with different narratives in the work that I create, which is different from choreographers I know and that I've seen their work that don't work with narratives and with storytelling in the more traditional understanding of that word. And I really appreciate that. It's not my work. To give an example, when I was young, I just mentioned Pina Bausch, but in the same period, which was the period that I started to go to the school in Amsterdam, there's another company, which was the Trisha Brown company that I saw in the 80s several times. And I absolutely loved her work. And her work, especially at that time, was not based on narratives, on stories. It was really like an exploration about different qualities of movement. And absolutely gorgeous, beautiful work. Recently, the last years, I've seen much of the work of Christina Caprioli here in Stockholm at Hallen, and I absolutely love her work. It's so profound, it's so beautiful, it's so moving. But it's not work that is trying to tell me a story or trying to tell me a message other than the pleasure, the beauty, the sensibility of seeing a dancer in the movement material that this dancer is performing. It's very complicated, very articulated movement material. As an audience, when I look at Louise dancing, I'm looking at Louise, I'm looking at a person who is dancing. I'm looking at a dancer performing. You hear the difference?
Yeah.
I'm looking at dancers. I miss the human aspect. I'm looking at person, human, that is in motion, that is in movement. I find it much more easy to relate to a performer when I'm looking as a human to another human.
Yes, I understand you completely. How do you see contemporary dance evolving as an art form in the future?
I don't know. I really don't know. Sometimes I feel like it goes in waves. I felt a lot of work that was created was very conceptual and very brain-based, where I missed the physicality and dance also as a sensorial experience, both to watch what the training is bringing. I do feel that it's which is also very Swedish, I think. A lot of dance is very much within quite narrow borders of subject matter and of the way of working. I've always been outside of that.
Dance was one of the first art forms invented by humans 40, 50,000 years ago. We have evidence for that. Was it shamanistic? Was it to entertain others? We will never know. How do they dance? What message did they convey? We will never know. I'm very fascinated by that. Is there ways to incorporate elements of symbolism into contemporary dance?
I don't have a general answer to that. I think it's a question that each choreographer will answer in a different way related to his work, her work, their work. Like myself, I don't work so much with symbolism. I do play with meaning in terms of understanding a performance or understanding a scene in a performance. The last 10 years or longer, I'm using more and more also video, which adds another layer of guiding the understanding of my audience.
What advice would you give somebody who is just starting to dance, who is starting this journey?
Well, one of the advices is to be curious and see a lot. See other performances. Like what you said, like your friends rather going to a cafe to drink a beer or coffee than to go to a gallery or a performance, etc. To rather see a Hollywood movie than an independent movie. I wonder, like, how do you feed yourself as a beginning artist through the art of others? I think that is really, at least for me, it has been really stimulating. I think it's connected to a very basic curiosity and need in me also to see things that are created by others. If I like it or not, that's another, it's another discussion, but I still want to see it. I loved to see performances that I didn't like. It sharpened my own vision, process of thinking and of realizing why I didn't like something. Sometimes it's really helpful to see something that you feel like, oof, this is bullshit. Clothes of the naked emperor.
Can you share a piece of advice or mentorship you received in your early career that has struck with you?
Ooh, I have to go back a long time.
But it's only 10 years.
You wish. One of the advices was, I did a workshop at the school in Amsterdam with David Moss. David Moss is an amazing musician, improviser. One of the advices he gave me was, Benno, concentrate on one thing sometimes and on one thing only. I think I had a tendency to spread, to want to do too many different things at the same time.
How would you like to be remembered?
I don't care so much. Of course, there's the personal life. I want to be remembered as a nice, interesting, funny father, grandfather. So for the people that are close to me, that remember me as a person who was nice to be with. I hope that I will be remembered by some people I've worked with.
If you could have a dinner with an artist, living or dead, who would it be and why? Or a character from a book?
The immediate response would sort of be like people that I really loved their work. The second thought was immediately like, how much would I feel intimidated sitting there at the dinner table? I mean, why would I be there? I would love to be able to sit down again with my mother. The reason for that is that my mother died when she was very young. She died before I went to the dance school, so she has not seen me becoming a dancer and everything that happened after that. But the moment I decided to quit my studies, cultural anthropology, my father was very much kind of, you should finish your studies, blah, blah, you have to finish what you start, think of the future. And my mother said to me, like, well, Benno, I think it's not an easy choice you make to stop your studies and you want to find your way into the theater, onto the stage. But I trust you that you will find your way. And that confidence of my mother in seeing the capacity in me that I will find my way, I would love to talk with her and explain to her what that meant to me and the history that unfolded itself after that.
That's a touching story. Thank you for sharing that story. How would you define art?
I stopped thinking about the question of what is art a long time ago. I feel it's often such controversial and it leads to so many misunderstandings. Art is the as a creative output of being human.
Do you have anything to add or ask me?
There's not immediate question. I mean, I really really enjoyed our talk and the questions you asked.
It was a pleasure talking with you, Benno. And I hope that you will continue doing more and more choreographies and more dance, and that I will see it.
I also hope that will happen.
My goal with this podcast is to show, especially Swedish audience, but audience around the world, that artistic processes and artists are not making their art out of the blue. It's not a hobby. They need to be paid. That I will encourage people to go and see art, dance or read a book or whatever it is, to go and explore art they want.
That's a beautiful and needed goal. Okay.
Have fun.
Have fun. Ciao.
Bye.